let's talk about some serious topics, okay? Smile. Take your smile off your face. We're getting serious here. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about this on Brock and Salk today. I thought this would be a great platform to expand on it a little bit more. We spent a decent amount of time. Salk wrote a column that published on Wednesday evening about why the offseason is where it is, what they can still do without spending any more money. But I want to kind of focus on this first part, where it's why are the Mariners doing what they're doing? And there's a number of ideas around it. The main one is, and I think the one you and I blatantly agree on the most, is that they don't have any money to spend.
No. False. They have money to spend. They're choosing not to.
The baseball operations department doesn't have any money to spend. The owners have money to spend.
Well, that's correct.
The people making baseball decisions don't have the money to spend because it's not their money.
That's correct. And here we are, roughly 18 minutes into the show. You want to say it or should I?
Mariners ownership does not think it's a smart strategy to add good baseball players to this team.
Woo! Not a smart strategy, baby. All right, we got it in today.
Circling around this entire idea, though, the one option is they choose not to spend money because of organizational philosophy, as bad and terrible as we think that is based on where the roster is right now. That's one line of thinking. The other line of thinking, which I think kind of correlates with it, and which brings us to the topic we're going to talk about here, is how much they believe in the final 5 weeks of the season. Lyle, how much should they believe in the final 5 weeks of the season in terms of projecting future offensive success?
You shouldn't buy into 5 weeks of anything. The 2019 Mariners started off 13-2 and then had the number 6 pick in the draft. There are fluky samples over the course of a 162-game season, and buying into small sample sizes is a mistake. You highlighted this perfectly on Brock and Salk on Thursday. I'll let you highlight it here. You can take a look at the best Mariners offensive stretch both in 2023 and 2024, and it's pretty telling.
Where do we even start with this? So
I was trying to tee you up for that. Why don't you start with that? Those stretches.
Well, there's a lot of information here. So the stretch in 2024 I'm talking about is from the first game Dan managed in and Edgar coached in as the hitting coach to the end of the season. The stretch in 2023 I looked at was the last week of July through the end of August. If you remember in 2023, August, they set a franchise record for wins in a month. They had the best offense in baseball. They were incredible. I thought they were going to win the World Series after that month, legitimately. That month was an outlier good month for Mariners baseball in 2023. And you can say the same thing in 2024. Let me know if this sounds similar when I read off these months. 2023 offensive ranks by month. These are by WRC+. In April in 2023, the Mariners were 21st. In May, they were 13th. In June, they were 16th. In July, they were 7th. August, they were 1st. September, they were 19th. In 2024, in April, they were 14th. May, they were 16th. June, they were 14th. July, they were 14th. August, they were 21st. In September, they were 2nd. One of those sets of months, the Mariners decided to blow up their offense because they thought the offense was too inconsistent and they wanted to find a way to be more consistent. They weren't totally wrong. I mean, that offense was a little too strikeout prone, but that was a choice by them because the offense net for the season was productive. But the Mariners take a look at this same offensive set in 2024 with similar results month by month, with one clear outlier month, and decide that could be a norm going into next season. That just doesn't sound right, does it?
No, not at all. This goes back to the idea of looking at a small sample and banking on it is a mistake. Look, you brought in a coaching staff that you believe in. Great. Awesome for you guys. But the expectation that some of the players that hit the way they hit in that stretch are going to repeat it? No. There's no way. And there is no two people that highlight that more than Luke Raley and Victor Robles. I'll give you two different numbers if you want to look at two different stretches. Our buddy Peter Apple of the Just Baseball Show tweeted this out back in September. The stretch from the middle of August to the middle of September, you know who the top two hitters in baseball were in that time? Luke Raley and Victor Robles. Those guys had WRC pluses over that stretch of 200. 200. That's Aaron Judge level. If you want to just look at September, Victor Robles in that stretch had a WRC plus of 192, and Raley had a WRC plus of 179. So, if you're banking on those guys to do anything similar to that, which I'm sure the Mariners are not, but that still circles back to the problem here. You're looking at an offense that was second in the league you're looking at an offense that was top 3 in the league in different offensive categories over that final stretch, with players way overperforming their norm to the point where it's not even close to sustainable. There's a real world, if you look at those 200 WRC plus numbers from the middle of August to the middle of September, where each of those guys dropped down 90 to 100 points in 2025 in terms of their season total. And guess what? If both Luke Raley and Victor Robles are 105 to 110 WRC plus hitters, those are perfectly fine years. That's above average. But then the offense you are banking on to carry your 2025 season would take a 90% drop-off from those guys playing at their career norms, or what Victor Robles now has turned himself into. And trying to rely on them being anything more than that ranges anywhere from irresponsible to flat-out asinine.
I was trying to look at this in more of an optimistic sense and see if there was any way that this can work. There were
bad.
No, this is me playing the other side of the argument here. They did have a different approach, it seems like, in September. They did. But there's just no guarantee that carries over. That's something that needs to be proven over an entire season. Do you remember how much we spent talking about the individual hitting coaches last year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time. But now that Edgar's there, that's not going to be as much of an issue. Issue if it doesn't work, success story if it does work. It's not just going to be, it doesn't feel like it's going to be some magic fix that they're all of a sudden shifted ideology on hitting is magically going to fix this offense. That part I don't feel. So there's in terms of like the individual contributors of these stretches, there's a positive side to this I can find, and I think there's a negative side to this. The negative side you just highlighted, where there are players here where it's unsustainable to keep doing this. If you look at the 2023 one, you could tell why it was unsustainable, Lyle. The third best hitter that month was...
Oh, boy. Who is it?
In that stretch from the end of July through the end of August, it was Dylan Moore.
My guy.
171 WRC plus.
Shout out Demo.
Who else was on this list? So Ty France was on that list. He was not a contributor in 2024. Teoscar Hernandez was off the Mariners in 2024. As you could tell, like, there was not the ability to repeat that with that group. And the Mariners, if you take a look at their September, we've already deemed that it is unlikely that Victor Robles and Luke Raley could repeat 75% of that month's production and realize, oh, the offense looks like this because those two players are your two best players, but we shouldn't be relying them on to be your two best players. Justin Turner's on this list, and so is Randy. So Turner's the one you would subtract from the 2024 list. You see the supplemental players, you can't rely on those as much. You'll have hot months, but it's going to be rare where they're all going to be hot at the exact same time, and that's not something you can rely upon. So let's say all those players aren't hot at the same time, Lyle. Then maybe the Mariners go right back down to the 15th rated offense, and nothing changes. Mm-hmm. So that's about where they are, right? Middle of the pack to bottom third, depending on the season. 2023 was a little bit higher. 2024 was a little bit lower.
Yeah. Can I ask you a
question? You want
question?
to hear my positive, though?
Oh.
You want to hear the positive of both of these, as we've tried to talk about? Usually correlates with a good Julio month.
Yes. Lay it on me, and then I have a question for you.
That's it.
That's the correlation. Yes, a good
That's
Julio
it. It's
month.
pretty simple.
Well, Julio went off in September.
Right. So it's almost like that's why we've said, and I'm going to just repeat it, like if Edgar gets the best out of Julio, then it almost doesn't matter to me what else he does.
Here are my 2 questions for you. You're referencing supplemental players on the roster. How many Mariners offensive players on the current roster are not supplemental players? Right now, I can think of 3, Julio, Cal, and Randy. The fact you have to think hard about this is not good.
You're right. Offensive players, yeah.
Yeah, that's not good.
Well, JP's not a supplemental player.
It's not supplemental, but didn't have a great...
It's supplemental production, but he's not a supplemental player. Last year
All right.
was supplemental production.
All right, fair.
Well, it wasn't even supplemental. It was bad production.
Right. My other question for you is, when you mentioned all the talk we had about the individual hitting coaches last year, by that, do you mean people like Jared DeHart, or do you mean these guys' private swing coaches?
I mean the private swing coaches.
Yeah. And I don't know how that's going to change things here in 2025. We don't know what these guys do or how they've altered their plans in the offseason. Again, we heard some rumblings from enough people that felt like Julio's private swing coach that he'd worked out with the last couple years was a bit of a disaster, and that played some factor into why it took him so long to get going, and Edgar really helped him get right. What's Julio's offseason plan now? We don't know. That's for Julio to figure out, and that's for all of us to eventually learn if he ever talks about it. So, did he get away from that old hitting coach? I guess we'll find out.
Spring training will be telling for that. This mostly boils down to how are the Mariners going to get their core hitting consistently, and is that a reliable... Can you rely on that right now going into this season based off of September? I don't think you can say that based off of September alone that our core is going to be good next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you cannot.
And I was trying to piece this together and make a good argument about this. So in summary of this, saying something will be because of 1 month is a bad argument. In summary, 2023, that 34-game stretch was an outlier. I think the 34-game stretch in 2024 was an outlier as well. You can look at the blueprint for success for what this regime has done. In 2022, the Mariners had 4 core players play and hit extremely well throughout the season. And that was a big part of helping them make the playoffs and feel a little bit more consistent offensively. They didn't get that in 23 as much as they wanted to. Again, mostly boiling back to Julio. They didn't get that in 2024. Again, mostly boiling back to Julio. Right? So if they can get that going into this season, great. But that's not going to be a thing based off of what they did last September. I don't think. Not exclusively.
Yeah. Who are the 4 players from 22? Is it Julio, Cal, Gino, and Ty France?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ty France, it was really only for a half.
It was. It ballooned. It kept his numbers up to look good at the end of the year.
Right. Yeah. No. Oh, that injury in Oakland, man, when he got ran into, changed everything, it felt like. Yeah, I don't really understand how the Mariners saw what was a monster hot stretch in 2023, said, this offense needs to be blown up, and then saw this hot stretch in 2024 and said, everything's fixed. As Richard Sherman liked to say when he was up there with the cutout of Doug Baldwin in that press conference 10 years ago, it feels a little hypocritical.
Nice pull.
Thanks.
We'll just have to see. But that, I would say, it's not an answer. It's not, I don't think it's right, but it's probably an idea of why they haven't done much. Flawed thinking. They haven't really earned the benefit of the doubt to evaluate hitters and what fits because they haven't gotten right enough. But that's their strategy, and that's why we are where we are.
Uh-huh. I'll say this as we wrap this part of the show up, this segment. I would take the 2023 offense over the 2024 offense in a heartbeat at this point. And that's crazy to say because that offense drove us crazy at points of 23. But at least that offense had an identity and did some things well. They hit balls out of the ballpark, and while they struck out a lot, when they mashed, they mashed. But as Trevor May said in his little rant in his YouTube video, which you should go check out on Trevor's YouTube channel, if you somehow don't know about Trevor's YouTube channel yet, I don't know how you don't, because he does awesome stuff. But he essentially said, here's the thing about the Mariners. They don't run, they don't hit for power, and they strike out near the most in baseball. And as he says, it's like, you got to pick one. It's like, pick an identity. Either overhaul your team where you are just contact-oriented, bunt, slap hit, run the bases, or be a power-hitting lineup. You can't be in the middle.
What is the Mariners' identity?
Having $15 million to spend all offseason?
It's hard to argue that one.
Yeah. I mean, wasting a generational rotation, there's another.